My name is Jimmy Crary. No, my name is Jimmy Crary. No, my name is Jimmy Crary. Would the real Jimmy Crary please stand up? I want to discuss with you the Jimmy Crary who has a legacy in the city of Pittsburgh. If you want to see the carpets destroyed, ravaged by insane jaws and mania, if you want to see the carpets ravaged in the city of Pittsburgh, tell them something is worth a fortune. It's sure to do it. Pittsburgh and Donald Trump have a mania for sharing state secrets with the Russians that they don't share with the American people. One of those state secrets is that Donald Trump is in a showdown with me that began with a blindside attack when I was 11 years old. Yes, that's Donald Trump's idea of a duel. What's going on in the news after a massacre in Sukkot rave in Israel was moved closer to the border so that it was an easier target, is that the papers are full of American bullies who are Jewish calling for the usual extermination of the Arabs and so forth. And parties like the Pittsburgh Post Gazette getting behind them and saying this was personal. And the legacy of Jimmy Crary shows how personal it is because they're the ones who wrote the AIDS scroll that they shared with the Russians, but not the American people, by an Israeli named Gail Carolyn Burson, which is worth a fortune. Well, we see from the newspapers what a lost cause reasoning with Pittsburgh is. Hamas pushing this showdown for Trump killed 40 infants, and there's no way that you can apologize for that. It's not that it's nothing Pittsburgh has done before. The script reads, the persona is subjected to successive degradations of the X motive, and it's called I Am the Walrus, and features the butcher baby reasoning of the Beatles. Unsurprisingly, it turns out that the Godspell cast at Carnegie Mellon University actually put this script together for Lennon. And fake news about fake news and wonders of wonders, he pulled a Houdini. He was promoting himself at my expense, saying I could have saved John Lennon. So what was going on behind the scenes in Pittsburgh was that King Crimson and Genesis were mingling with fans saying, anyone who's lucky will get our attention. So people started vying for their attention, and for some strange reason, they started giving their attention to me. And Pittsburgh calls this game Kill the Man with the Ball. They started beating me up, lying about me and lying to me and subjecting me to successive degradations of the X motive. What Seattle should have done is what they lied to me and said they were going to do, which was protect me from abuse. They should have said the evidence shows that an Israeli prison warden in corrections created a poison that was forced down Jimmy's mouth when he was 14 years old and somnambulant under authoritarian controls and battered half to death, which poisoned him irreversibly. And Leslie Katz was untouched. Well, Penis Gabriel and Robert Fripp were like, we can make it look like he could have been our friend. And then they had a Fox media agent in my house to grab some letters that they planted on me to say, aha, he could have saved John Lennon. So they went to the Russians, could have saved John Lennon. Went to Yoko, could have saved John Lennon. Went to the Russians, Could have saved John Lennon. Went to the AIDS victims. Could have saved John Lennon. And Trump's war game was born. It's called Two Virgins Pussy Ball. Now this took place. One of the father of the Fox media agent who lay in wait to grab the letters once told me when he wasn't calling Americans idiots, no one ever went broke underestimating the taste of the American people. It would take immense learning to vie with the incredible fact that Seattle calls itself King County after this macabre warlike defense for the people who started AIDS, which is what they've come up with. Um, and they say basically you can't say anymore. They want to promote a bar association that itself is a form of gaslighting. The whole idea that there's a legal system in America is a gaslighting. It's like the Wizard of Oz face. It's a pirate. It's a Pirates of the Lost Ark sort of phenomenon. They just pass around money bags to each other, and occasionally pick on somebody enough that somebody gets a big lawsuit, and everybody thinks justice is a big lawsuit. And until Pittsburgh, it's worth a fortune. Pittsburgh has NAACP plumbers. And to understand the plumbing system of the NAACP in Pittsburgh, you have to read Ralph Proctor's book section on Martin Luther King. It's a book about the Pittsburgh Civil Rights Movement. And they were like, Martin Luther King's not from around here, man. He can't lead us. He can't lead us. I don't know if it had any influence on Roberto Clemente's decision not to speak with Martin Luther King at Ford's Field, but there's no record anywhere, not even at the King Center in Atlanta, of what Martin Luther King said when he was in Pittsburgh, because he was shunned by the plumbing system of the NAACP in Pittsburgh, who also made a big deal about my father being one of those World War II GI Bill outsiders, and when they helped the KKK and the German Green Party kill him, and then dust away the evidence for Pittsburgh's personal relationship with the Jewish establishment. Unfortunately, I have Parkinson's disease. I can't read my handwritten notes, but I seem to be wanting to say something about the alibi that developed. What they should have done, obviously, was arrested Gail Burson, arrested Leslie Katz, arrested John Schulman, and said there's an Israeli network who included biowar scientists, and we need to get a grip on them so that this doesn't happen again. Instead, they used it as an advertisement for their willingness to do it again. And they've shown through the macabre massacres how complicated it is when you don't do it by biowar. It's much more complicated. So sit back and let Trump come back in office and use another COVID-19 on us is what the message of the invasion really is. Because Pittsburgh wouldn't know where to find the first book on Ukrainian corruption, much less effectively address the octopus that the arms merchants have used at Carnegie Mellon and so forth, have used Ukraine to develop. They've created an octopus. Trump and Putin are buddy-buddies, shaking hands like a Pink Floyd album cover behind the back. And so the Hamas gets these weapons from the Ukraine octopus. And so they're smuggling to make living conditions very difficult for people trying to raise a family in this world. They've actually used the black spot and the empty set on me as part of their index psychology regarding processing of merchandise, which is what Goebbels used to call civilians. He called them the merchandise. So we're back in those days, and Pittsburgh's plumbing regards me as a piece of merchandise. So does St. Louis. And King Crimson came in and said, you can't say our names. You can't write in the articles. Hang. They were like the Israeli soldiers who grabbed the books from the Palestinians, right? And, the whole idea of, go ahead and tell your story queer while you're paranoid schizophrenic. You can't go to school. So, hang is what you get from Seattle. How they could claim that they're King County while endorsing the people who started AIDS and calling the attempt to identify them a fiction or a delusion. It takes work. But nobody who does any real work for Seattle gets paid for it, except in punishment and death. And their excuse for all this is some Italian bimbo who came on to me from Milan. That covers everything. It shows that Donald Trump was right, that Jimmy Crary wanted a girlfriend. Oh, horrors. So what we see in this situation is that Pittsburgh is psychologically incapable of understanding what their moral obligations are in an atrocity. So naturally, secretly, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is celebrating the mayhem in Israel, secretly, on the level of Rabbi Amim. In other words, if you were to plug them into Peter Gabriel's interrogation system, you were to plug Vince Irene into Peter Gabriel's interrogation center, they'd be going, what Hamas did was a godsend. We're going to get Jimmy Crary now. What Hamas did was a godsend. We're going to get Jimmy Crary now. What Hamas did was a godsend. We're going to get Jimmy Crary now. That's what they're really thinking. And all their blood oath and death vow, blood oath and death vow. What Hamas did was a godsend. We're going to get Jimmy Crary now.